All right, everybody, here we go. Hopefully you got up, you ran around your office or where your computer a few times, or you got some caffeine. Let's go ahead with CIS244, Chapter 2, the business case, Part 2. So let's talk about priorities and setting priorities. Systems result in more information or produce better results. So how do we measure that? Why is this project a priority over another project? What is it that it's going to produce that the other project may or may not? Again, a lot of times it comes down to money. Is it going to increase money, or is it going to decrease perhaps cost? So will the system serve the customer better? That may be intangible at the start until you find that more customers are using the system, and that's a good thing. Will the system serve the organization better? So have we put in, say, an ERP system or a customer relationship management system that is producing better results for us? Factors that affect priorities. So can the project be implemented in a reasonable time period? What is reasonable? A year? 2 years? How long will the results last? So that's that software development life cycle, right? Not only for development, but the time the system is in use before it becomes unusable, or we increase technology and upgrade the system. So just because a system can be done, there may be technology that we say, we shouldn't do it until we've improved our current systems or move to the next operating system and then build a system that works on it, that kind of thing. So with, of course, virtualization, we can build older systems and have them work on new operating systems, new foundations, etc. So are the necessary financial, human, and technical resources available? I think we've kicked this one in the rear enough. We've got to have the money to do the system. We've got to have the people to do the system, and definitely we've got to have the technology resources. Whenever possible, the analyst should evaluate proposed project based on tangible costs and benefits that represent actual and appropriate dollar values. So again, that's what we really strive for, but sometimes we do things because of the intangible possibilities. We can't say for sure that putting in a new customer relationship management system is going to increase customer satisfaction. We can only do that after the fact. So those intangible projects tend to be a little harder to take on and work through, because we don't know if we're going to indeed see the results we expect. So discretionary and non-discretionary projects, so projects where management has a choice in implementation, are called discretionary. We don't have to do them, but it might be nice. Projects where no choice exists are called non-discretionary projects. So non-discretionary projects are things like, we've had this archaic system. We know it's going to break down. We're starting to see bad data in it, etc. We've got to get something done, and we've got to get it done now. Yep, there's that term again, now. Or, our competitors did this. It's worked for them. We're seeing customers migrate to them because of this. We better get this done. We have no choice to do that. So be careful with those kind of projects, though, because a lot of times they'll be taken on to keep up with the Joneses, when in all actuality we don't have to. We have a product or a service that people will continue to use even though we haven't implemented something. So preliminary investigation, interaction with managers and users. Like I said, get everyone involved, or a representative of every person that's going to leverage that system or that information technology project. Let people know about the investigation. Explain your role. Employee attitudes and reactions are important and must be considered. So what are you feeling? Are you feeling that employees want to get engaged? Or is there an initial pushback? If there's an initial pushback, you have to get rid of that pushback. You can't continue on with a project and a project and a project for users that are like, this will never work, right? And today in our negative world, you're going to get a lot of that. You've got to find a way to get people involved. And a lot of times the best way to do that is to get a representative of that group involved so that they can go back and say, hey, this is going to be great for you. It's going to save you time. It's going to give you more information faster to do your job easier. You need to get on board. Be careful of the use of the word problem. I don't use the word problem. I try not to. Every problem is simply a challenge. How do we overcome that challenge? Question users about additional capability they would like to have. Keep in mind, though, my best suggestion is, what do we need now? What would it be nice to have in the future? Build the product, get it in for the now, and then expand the product or the project to provide the would be nice. If, again, those would-be nices are viable. So I tend to take on projects in steps that this is what the project has to produce in order to be worthwhile to do. And once we get that in, we can start adding those features and additional services, etc., that provide even more benefit and more return on investment. But again, the project may be, hey, we can do this part. It's going to produce this tangible cost. We'll take that on. We'll put it in. We'll analyze it. We'll audit it. We'll make sure it produced. And then, hey, we then have the ability, the time, etc., to do more things within the product or service that we produce. So planning in the preliminary investigation, again, system analysts typically follow a series of steps. Exact procedure depends on the nature of the request. I've seen it change from project to project request as to what we do. Understand the problem. You got to understand the problem or the opportunity. A lot of times this means getting out from behind the desk, getting out from the project team room, going out, seeing the problem, investigating it at a business level, being on the floor, seeing what users are doing, how they're using a system that may be in place today, or see how the business process works today so you can build a better system. Remember, a poor business process only gets worse, faster when we implement technology. So we got to have a good business process going in. Popular techniques for investigating cases and effects, the fishbone diagram or Ishikawa diagram, you can look those up on YouTube. You can look those up on the web and understand them. We can also do Pareto charts. So define the project scope and constraints. So what is the scope? And then, of course, project creep, where we get involved in a project and we say, boy, it'd be nice if it did this and did this and did this and did this. So suddenly we set out to build a Volkswagen to get from point A to B efficiently, and the project grew to a Ferrari. So suddenly we over-engineered it, we over-managed it, we over-cost it, and the only thing it provided was to get from point A to point B faster, but it's using more resources to do it, and we didn't really need to do that. So keep that in mind. Of course, the constraints, those time constraints, money constraints, etc. Project scope and constraints, so present versus future. So what is it we need today versus what would it be nice to have tomorrow? Internal versus external, mandatory versus desirable. Keep these in mind. This can simply be a checklist of things. Regardless of the type, all constraints should be identified as early as possible to avoid future problems and surprises. Don't forget, one of the constraints may be that Bill is involved in the project, but we know Bill's health isn't good. We know he takes a lot of days off, and we expect for Bill not to be involved in every project meeting or whatever the case may be. So keep that in mind. People leave, people take vacations. Sometimes it's the little things that keep a project from being successful, not the big things like, oh, 2 of our project team members moved on to another company. So, but of course, all of that stuff needs to be taken into consideration as project risks. So perform fact-finding involves various techniques. Interview. Find out what people think. Depending on what the information is needed, investigate system request. Fact-finding might consume several hours, days, or weeks. Remember, the more stuff we do on the initial end before we start the project, the better we understand the project possibilities and the project risks. But there's also the other side, which is you have to find that balance so that we're not spending a year figuring out if we should do a project that should have been done a year ago. Analyze organizational charts. So, obtain organizational charts to understand how departments function, identify individuals you might want to interview as we do this. One of the things I always liked about an organizational chart is it quickly showed me how many levels of management I was going to have to step through, and was I going to be able to get that top management and middle management to support the project. I got to ask my boss, who then has to ask his boss, who asks her boss, and the project never gets done because there's just too many people involved. So, perform fact-finding, those interviews, focus groups. So interviews are a good thing, but remember, we're taking a lot of time dealing with, say, one person, where we could do a focus group and get ideas generated by a group. Okay, but remember, with that also comes the idea of, oh, that's a great idea. I'm going to just jump on that idea wagon and not come up with my own. So groups can be limiting. Review documentation if it exists. Observe operations. Like I said, get on to the production floor. Get out where the system's going to be used. We can certainly do surveys. The challenge with surveys is to be very impartial and not produce a survey that produces the answers you hope it does. So doing surveys, there's an art to doing surveys, folks. Analyze project usability, cost, benefit, and schedule data. So before you can evaluate feasibility, you must analyze the data carefully. Keep in mind, is the data good? Always ask that question. Or was this data from a survey that, was leading? Information you obtain, how'd you gather it? How are you going to analyze it? Keep all that stuff in mind. Analyzing project usability, cost, benefit, and schedule data. Remember, with cost can be tough, but that's one of the areas when we're talking dollars, we really have to try to do our absolute best to define those. And remember, if you're going to start a business with $100,000, look for $200,000. It's the same thing here. Don't underestimate costs. A lot of projects fail because business leaders say, wow, we've reached that $100,000 level. That's what it was going to cost. That's what you told me it was going to cost. And we're not even close to reaching our goal. I almost, as a manager, got to go, whoa, wait a minute. Maybe we need to stop this and just take the $100,000 loss. So, will you conduct interviews? For who? How many? Is a survey the right way to go? A lot of times in doing a survey, you're going to want to turn around and give that survey to a small group and get their reaction just on the survey. Did they feel like the question led them towards needing to reply a certain way? If so, the survey's not good. Go back and do the survey so you get a good survey, so you get great answers and responses. One of the challenges with surveys, I'm sure you've all seen those emails come in. Take this short survey for your chance to win a $50 Amazon gift certificate. And the short survey turns out to be an hour long. Be realistic and tell users how long the survey is. Give them ample time to complete it. And always give them the opportunity to give you more information than just a checkbox. Cost, again, benefits, is it tangible, is it intangible? Feasibility, we already talked about this stuff. So, is the operational feasibility there, technical feasibility, economic, schedule? My favorite saying, just because one woman can have a baby in 9 months doesn't mean we can have 9 women have a baby in a month. That's not meant to be sexist. What it's meant to say is, look, just because we put more people on a project doesn't mean it's going to get faster. As I'm going to show you in class next week, we're going to do a team building exercise where we find the optimum number of team members needed to complete a task. So that will give you an idea. We're also going to see who our emerging project managers or emerging leaders are. Present results from and recommendations to management, the final task and preliminary investigation. You got to do that report. You got to document it, because although we don't do the project today, We now have all the information to do it 6 months from now and don't have to repeat this process. Or we can see why we couldn't do it now, but 6 months from now we evaluate it again and suddenly it's feasible to do the project. So 6, present the results and recommendations to management. One of the greatest challenges here from a project leader or a project feasibility person's perspective is you're now engaged, you've now invested time, and you want to see this go through. You need to do your best to be impartial and produce a presentation that gives the facts and just the facts as to whether we should do this. Management then decides and you go through. So you do that presentation, which is essentially step 5 and 6. Who's going to do what are the time and costs, expected benefits, appendix, etc., additional research, knowing that company A did it and they were successful, company B did it, we're using a third-party vendor, they've done this 15 times with 14 successes. Ask those tough questions. One of the biggest challenges tends to be time and people time, and what I mean by that is if you have people from other departments, you need to get commitment from those managers that they are going to reduce that person's workload by X so that you know that they have 6 hours a week of their time to work on your project, versus just saying, yeah, you're going to be able to use Bill and Susan on this project. Well, show me. Schedule their time so that I see they have the time available. Because if not, suddenly Bill or Susan and Susan aren't going to be fully engaged when they have to work 40 hours, and now they've got to put in 6 hours on your project. So that's pretty much it. You can go through the chapter summaries. Make sure you're reading the book, not just doing it by the lecture. Learn as much as you can. Find those terms that you don't understand. Go out to the web. Go out to Wikipedia while it's still available before SOPA takes over. Just kidding. Ain't going to happen, folks. And research. Remember, the more time you spend researching, the more you learn and remember. All right, that's my lecture. Y'all take it easy. Have a great weekend. See you soon.